skateboarding in the 70s was interesting because no one had done anything that we were doing before. So I think it was a really fun time. I took all my P's and Q's from a guy named Jay Adams. He was my idol, and Tony Alva, and I ended up getting to skate against some of those guys in contests, so that was kind of cool. But the most incredible thing about the 70s was all the people I met. And those guys are all in their 50s now, and they're all ripping too still. One other thing that I'm doing now is I'm writing for a magazine called Concrete Wave, and my column for the last 2 years has been called The Bridge. And what it's about is basically the history of skateboarding, and I'm trying to teach some of these kids that don't really know where all these things came from, and introducing them to some of the legends. And I've interviewed Tony Alva, Alan Gelfand, the guy who invented the Ollie, and the Turning Point guys, and I just did Steve Caballero, which that interview was incredible. And Steve Caballero is the nicest guy in the world. And I just finished my new one, which is Tony Magnuson, and it's basically the bridge between the vert and ramp revolution of the 80s and how it turned into street skating in the early 90s. And it basically, we're talking about people like Matt Hensley and Danny Way, and that's the next part of basically the history of skateboarding. That's where we're at right now. You know, it's interesting to be a skater and still be out here and ripping. Well, ripping, that's relevant to who you are, I guess, but it's interesting to be a skateboarder and be 57 years old, because a lot of the guys, they come out here and they skate with you and they're like anywhere from 8 years old to 28 years old, and they see you do these things and they're like, what is that? And I'm like, that's a trick from the 70s, and they're like, wow, and then you see kids try them, and that's really gratifying. They appreciate it. The bummer is of course that when you fall, it hurts way more than it ever did, and so you feel it for a couple more days than normal, but it's a great thing. And I would like to probably quote Steve Caballero. When I interviewed him, I asked him, you know, what was your favorite time ever of skateboarding? And he actually looked at me straight in the eye and he goes, you know, I think right now is the best time to skate because there's so much to skate. In the 70s, we were just skating junk. Like, the parks were terrible. Some of them were good, but ramps were terrible. We didn't really learn to build real good ramps yet. Then the 80s evolved, but now there's free parks everywhere. Like, this park is incredible. Santa Rosa has a great historical park. Sebastopol has an incredible park. The Napa area has a park. There's parks everywhere. And you can go anywhere in the state to almost any town and there's a skateboard park. So I would have to agree with Cabby and say that this is the best time to be a skateboarder.